Okay, and I'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Tom Mewald. I'm the Oregon RCPP coordinator. I've been in this position for about 3 years now. And I'll be talking about the RCPP program FY23 Notice of Funding Opportunity with an Oregon perspective on it. So yeah, the goals of this is to help potential applicants develop strong proposals. So hopefully you have some ideas, and hopefully this will help lead you towards that, or at least lead you toward the path to get to that strong proposal. Want to augment the national RCPP webinar. I don't want to recreate that, but I want to kind of provide the Oregon perspective and what we do here. Build awareness for the program in Oregon, just so people are aware of how RCPP kind of works in Oregon. Hopefully provide some decision support about the different funding pools that are out there under this Notice of Funding opportunity, and then finally address your questions. So I have about 30 slides that I'm going to get through, and I want to leave time for your questions. So some essentials, you probably know this, but I'm just going to repeat it. The deadline to submit the proposals is August 18th. Don't wait till the last minute, because you need to go through the RCPP portal, and sometimes that takes 2 to 5 days to get the authorization to get in there. So just don't wait. And then you can see here the administrative priorities that are listed in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. So yeah, Oregon's approach to RCPP and our strategic approach to conservation. So Oregon is somewhat unique nationally, although a few more states have started to adopt this strategic approach to conservation. And so what it is, and it really dovetails really nicely with RCPP. So Oregon became a very early adopter to RCPP, and we have the most, I want to say the most, but we're probably like first or second to Iowa, given the year, who knows? But we do have a lot of RCPPs compared to other states. And so the strategic approach is basically letting local entities identify what the resource concerns are, what the conservation problems are, and what the solutions are. So they define a geography, and then they work with the local offices to develop these things called CISs, or conservation implementation strategies. And that is very much like RCPP. And so when RCPP came along, and that fits really nicely with what RCPP is meant to do, which is to locate a particular geography or region, identify resource concerns, and then focus NRCS financial assistance and technical assistance, along with what partners can bring in a partnership to help solve those problems. So that's just a bit there. Oregon's RCPP program, we kind of focus on strategic landscape and watershed scale projects. We've had typically over the last 5-6 years about $10 to $20 million per year for multiple projects. We usually get 4 or 5 new projects per year. It's an evolving program, and so you're going to see later on the kind of the latest evolutions that are happening within RCPP as we try to do what's called the RCPP improvement process. RCPP is not a grant, although there are some grant-like aspects with it under the alternative funding arrangement, and there might even be a potential for a true grant under this Notice of Funding Opportunity. But traditionally, classic RCPP it's a real partnership between NRCS and the lead partner, and the partnership to solve resource concern problems within a particular geography. And a lot of that means that you are working closely with NRCS practices and contracting mechanisms and things like that. AFA is actually a lot more kind of fluid, in that the lead partner really is in charge of putting funds on the ground. So in Oregon, we have a portfolio of projects that are making impacts at landscape and watershed scales. Since 2015, we've had 35 projects. I'll show a map later that shows the current ones, and that's about $90 million in NRCS funding allocated, and about $130 million in partner contributed funds together. So that's a significant amount of resources invested towards strategic conservation. Currently in RCPP, we have 24 different projects. I'll show the map in a bit. With $83 million in NRCS funding and $103 million in partner contributions. So here's a map of where our current projects are. So just to give you a sense of the scope and the scale of some of these geographies that we're talking about. And I'll kind of walk through, not all of them, but just kind of walk through at a high level what they are. On the West Coast here, we have a project called the Tillamook Watersheds Project. This is part of the Salmon Superhighway effort by Trout Unlimited. And so the goal of the project is to identify, well, they have identified key fish barriers, and now the plan is to take those barriers down and provide more in-stream habitat for salmon and other species. A similar goal is in the one that's just adjacent to, and that's the Tualatin Watershed Conservation Partnership. And that is an alternative funding arrangement. So a similar goal, but using the AFA as a way to get funds out, which is actually provides maybe a little bit more flexibility. Looking at the Willamette Valley, we have a couple projects in Yamhill County and then Polk County down here. They're both focused on oak restoration. So, really making some big impacts across multiple landowners on oak restoration across the valley. Again, this has been prioritized, and they're using these priority places that others I have identified. And now RCPP comes in as a funding source to make that happen. This string of projects of blobs, polygons here that you see in the Cascades, that's all one project, and those are the 2020 fire burns. If you fire polygons, if you can remember back to 2020 when it seemed like there was fire and smoke everywhere. So the goal of the project is to more effectively get funds out to landowners, to foresters, to reforest their land. And going through NRCS contracts across this broad of a scope and scale, it makes it's not maybe the most efficient. So this is a AFA alternative funding arrangement project that really tries to find efficiencies at scale to bundle and kind of be more effective in getting the financial assistance needed out on the ground. Let's see, going out east in Harding County, we have one focused on sagebrush and then also Medusa head at landscape scales. Up in the Eastern Oregon landscape, we have this large one. All of these blobs here are ODF, is our project with ODF working on private lands that are interspersed within ODF lands. So this is really a all lands approach to forest restoration, forest thinning, forest resilience, and also having impacts on the water table for fish in the region too. Wallowa County has a number of different RCPPs clustered around here, some focused on irrigation modernization and some focused on forestry. And I'll kind of skip over to the ones here in the center. These are focused on irrigation modernization for the most part. So we are funding piping of laterals to increase that used to be ditches, and so we're increasing the amount of water that is being conserved for fish and aquatic habitat. Also, the Lower Crooked River Restoration Project is in here, and a Mackay Creek project as well. So I know I missed some of the projects in here, but in terms of just to give you a sense of what these look like, I will now focus on this particular project for my next slide. And that is the Lower John Day Canyon Restoration Initiative, RCPP. So just to give you a sense of kind of how an RCPP functions, so the goal of they've identified a goal of what they want to do. They want to enhance over 40 miles of critical steelhead habitat in the basin. And they have a number of different activities that are kind of landscape scale restoration activities, including exclusion fencing. I really think the beaver dam analog structures is a really nice low-tech way to do a lot across a large area in terms of developing aquatic habitat, riparian plantings, and they initially include an easement. So just to give you a sense that you can have land management activities and easements together. And so the lead partner is Gilliam Soil and Water Conservation District, and then there are a number of participating partners here. And so what that looks like in terms of funding is that NRCS provided 3.9 million in funding, and then the partners provided 4.1 million. So that's about 8 million together, which makes a really nice, pretty large scale project to really have an impact at that landscape scale. And the kind of work that they're doing in that basin is very impressive. So just to give you a sense of kind of, beyond looking at those polygons on the map, what one kind of looks like in how it's structured. Eligible lead partners, you probably went over this and heard this in the national webinar if you attended those, but just to give you a sense in Oregon what that looks like. So we have ODF leading a project. We have the Warm Springs tribe as an Indian tribe as an eligible partner leading a project. We have a number of different conservation districts. I think there's about 7 or 8 of them that are lead partners. We have a couple irrigation districts that are leading some of those irrigation modernization projects, Three Sisters and East Fork. And then we also have kind of under this large bucket, or any organization or entity with an established history of working cooperatively with producers on ag land. And so those can be your NGOs, those could be local NGOs, larger NGOs, those can be watershed councils, and things like that. So hopefully your organization falls in one of those buckets and will work out well. So just to give you a very high level schematic of how this is going to work if your project is awarded. So you should be in this stage where you've developed a partnership and you have kind of a project idea that you're developing. I can't say enough how important this step is of working with NRCS field offices and basin team leads. So really make them aware of the project that you are proposing, get their input and feedback, and hopefully get their blessing that this is a good idea, because that is going to be a real source of support throughout your project, whether it's classic or AFA. The last thing that we want to see is a proposal coming in and the basin team leads and the field offices knew nothing about it. So please work closely with those entities. And when you get to the proposal, you're almost ready for review, feel free to bring me and the basin team leads in the field office in on a meeting to talk about where things are at and potential points for improvements. It is a partnership. You are writing the proposal, but we can provide some general feedback on what will work in terms of like the capacity that we have to make this happen. Okay, it gets funded, then it goes to a programmatic partnership agreement, and that could take 2 to 3 months to develop, and that kind of defines the scope of the project. It basically takes the proposal and turns it into an agreement. That agreement does not obligate funds, which would be the next level of agreements, which are supplemental agreements. And so we spent a lot of time in year 1 developing these agreements, and maybe you're doing some outreach and planning. I think a lot of projects do start with on the ground stuff in year 1, but years 2 and 5 tend to be you've developed your plan, your idea, and you have your agreement, and now let's 2 to 5 years to spend those funds. And year 5 is about outcomes and potential renewals and or 1-year extensions that are possible at that stage. Okay, so RCPP is really a partnership between NRCS and the lead partner. Again, and the participating partners down here. We develop an agreement that structures how we are obligating financial assistance. And those can be one of 4 different buckets, 5 actually, but I combined the US and the entity held easements together here. Land management is the most common. Those are kind of like equip contracts to particular landowners. You can develop rentals if you want to set aside land from production for any period of time from 3 to 5 years. Shorter term, we can do these easements, which are perpetual, and there can be funds for the easements. And then watershed is kind of like the PL 566 projects, kind of larger irrigation type projects, engineering heavy projects. We haven't done a lot of the RCPP watershed projects yet. And so all these funds need to be obligated through landowners who are developing contracts, except for the watershed that may not go that way. And then So the next goal is to develop outcomes. You basically, out of all these contracts with landowners to address these different that you've used all these different activities towards, what did that produce in terms of ecological and environmental outcomes, in terms of economic outcomes, in terms of social outcomes, and being able to articulate that with some, either a model, monitoring, or measuring of that impact. You probably heard about this, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. Financial assistance is at least 75% of the total budget, and then 25% goes to either 18% of that goes to partner implementation, which is really for things like design and planning and cultural resource surveys, anything that is focused on getting these contracts implemented on the ground. And then 7% goes into the TAE bucket, which is project management, outcomes, communications, outreach, and things like that. There used to be another pie here, and that was NRCS TA, and that was 5%, but we've eliminated that. And but I couldn't eliminate it from my pie chart for some reason. So it's still there, but it's not there. So remember that RCPP funds pay for eligible activities, not so much that we are funding staff, that's kind of the goal there. So the timeline, I think I kind of went through this, the submission deadline, the webinars happened, but hopefully by mid-December, there'll be project selections that will be awarded, and participants will be known that whether they were accepted or not. So this year's NFO is going to be a little bit different, actually a lot different than previous years. The big difference is, I'm going to kind of line out here, there's been 500 million, which is typically it's about 200 to 250 million a year across the country for classic and AFA projects. 50 million will be set aside for tribal entities and the alternative funding arrangements. The maximum project increased from 10 million to 25 million. So that's quite a big shift up. And I think we need to do that in order to spend the Inflation Reduction Act funds that we've received. I just talked about the 70-30 to 25% technical assistance. So that's something that's changed. We removed innovation from the project scoring. There used to be these 4 pillars, including, we would rank each project based upon innovation. We're not doing that anymore in this year. We removed, importantly, this is a big one, we removed the 1-to-1 partner contribution ratio requirement. So what that looks like, in the statute, it says that partners need to provide a significant amount of contribution to the overall project. So it's kind of up to you and us to figure out if that partner contribution is significant enough. So I realize that there's kind of a fuzzy line in there someplace. And then there's some things about easements that I'm not going to read these right now, but hopefully you can get a sense of those. So yeah, where will your proposal go? You're developing these proposals in the portal. Here's some kind of things to think about. Does the partner want to implement the conservation activities versus NRCS? Then maybe AFA is the way to go. Does the partner have the capacity to deliver a majority of the technical assistance? Then AFA might be the way to go. If not, then you're relying on NRCS to do a lot of the technical assistance. Which goes to, and then you want to go to classic, and this question kind of gets at that. Does the partner want NRCS to be involved heavily? Then you go to the classic approach where, maybe the contracting is done by NRCS field offices, and, maybe some of the other work is done, the planning is done by NRCS field offices, and the lead partner just wants to play a role in the outreach and other important parts of the project as well. So those are things to figure out with the basin team leads and the field offices. Are there significant climate smart or climate resilience aspects to the project? Then I think that each project will get points based upon how it's articulated in the proposal, and it might go to the IRA bucket of funds. versus the non-IRA, the Farm Bill project bucket of funds. It doesn't really matter where it goes in that, but just to let you know that it could go to the IRA fund. Is the project located within the Western Waters CCA and address water quality, quantity, and or inadequate habitat for fish, wildlife, and invertebrates? Then we'll go to the CCA. If not, then we'll go to the state multi-state pool. So there's a number of different pools, and you know, I think you can. It's not complex enough, but there are some kind of things to think about as you develop your proposal, and whether you want to go AFA or Classic is one. And whether you want to go with the Western Waters CCA, which is a different, you're basically competing in a different pool than the state multi-state. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's more competitive. You know, it's hard to say which one is better because it varies from year to year. So just to give you a sense of, this is this big brown blob on the coast. This is the Western Waters CCA. So anything in there that addresses water quantity, quality, and or limitations in terrestrial or aquatic habitat can compete with other projects within this pool under the CCA. Yeah, proposals will not specify whether they seek Farm Bill or IRA funding. Projects with high climate smart impact scores that we will determine will get preference among IRA funding. NRCS will create a single award slate that balances the IRA, the 50-50 split between funding pools of the CCA and state multi-state, and then state evaluations for Classic, and national reviews the AFA projects. So how are projects evaluated? This is different than previous years. Impact used to be 30%. Now it's 50%. So really this is a really important one. How will the project address resource concerns in the proposed area? Partner contributions is down to 15%. How will contributions amplify the impact of NRCS funding? And how effectively can the experience and resources of the partners support the project through project management and their abilities to lead and develop partnerships? So that's 35 points. And I'll get into a little bit more of ideas of how to address some of those things in this next section here. So hopefully these will be some tips and hints for developing your RCPP proposal. So for impact, you know, that pillar of impact, you know, is the partnership-based solution to a regional conservation problem? That's really an important one. Do you have a partnership in place? Is it just you and like another person is probably not as great as a broader another entity as you know, a broad partnership that has come together to provide resources and contributions to this regional conservation problem. Think about the broader conservation problem and how the proposed project fits into that solution. So be able to try to think about a clear theory of change of how your activities that you're proposing leads to the conservation outcomes that you're getting at. Generate substantial conservation benefits, and those benefits likely to be achieved based upon proposed methods and approaches. So yeah, develop something that's with some sound science and that seems reasonable to be able to monitor and map or be able to measure those conservation benefits. Think about the scale and scope of the project of your area and how will this make an impact. You want to have an actionable area. You don't want an area that's super big that maybe you're just working in a few small places. Then it's kind of hard to say how the impact really impacted that footprint that you're looking at. So it's kind of a Goldilocks thing that you're trying to figure out what is the right scale and scope of that boundary that you're trying to put around the project, and trying to, you know, how will that make an impact? How will the activities that you're proposing make an impact within that scale or that boundary? Yeah, outcomes are clearly defined, and how they will be measured is clearly defined and backed up by science. Does the proposal describe measurable and or achievable climate mitigations and or project outcomes? Are there economic and social outcomes as well? So I think that's important if you want to go to that IRA pool to really think about the climate mitigation aspect of it. And then is the project linked to a science-based action plan or conservation prioritization? So for example, has somebody has an entity or organization identified this as an important area, and that the things that you're doing in this place are backed by the importance of it is backed by some kind of science prioritization or study. So you want to kind of articulate that if you know it. So developing partner contributions. So again, the 1-to-1 ratio is not required anymore. So, but you probably, I would keep in mind that more is better. So try to find as much partner contribution as you possibly can, knowing that the 1-to-1 ratio is not required. So, I think the way we would look at it is, do the partner contributions align well with meeting the goals and objectives of the project? So cash versus in-kind. Cash scores higher in previous years. We'll see how it goes this year. Partner contributions are meaningful and complement the financial and technical assistance that is requested. Yeah, just, you don't want to have kind of random partner contributions that don't really, just happens to be somebody has some funds that are being spent within the boundary, but it doesn't relate to anything else in the resource concerns. You want to avoid that. Non-pending contributions are preferred. So for example, if you are, that you're not sure about year 3 of the grant that you might get, but you're still going to list it. But just, write that this is a pending contribution somehow, and in the proposal, just to make clear of that. And must fall within the time and space of the RCPP and be related to the resource concerns of the RCPP. So those are kind of the key kind of elements of your partner contributions. And then project management, that's that 35% of the total. So lead partner experience in working with agricultural communities and agricultural producers, and their ability to of working at a scope and scale of an RCPP. So being able to kind of talk about that and highlight those experiences. Having a realistic time frame for the project, so making sure that you can actually do what you say you're going to do within the project. Sometimes for some of the things that we try to do, sometimes easements can be difficult, and sometimes the PL 566 or watershed ones can be difficult to do within a 5-year period. So being able to lay out how you're going to do that within a realistic time frame is important. So understanding of NRCS practices and contracting and how NRCS works in general. So, a big part of working in the classic world is that you'll be working with NRCS contracting and practices and things like that, and just NRCS policies and having an understanding. Not everybody's going to know everything about NRCS, and that's why the benefit of the partnership is that you learn about NRCS and we learn about how your organization operates, and hopefully it's a good synergistic relationship that develops. So I guess one way to if you don't have that understanding, is to work with NRCS early and often on the proposal, just so you can really tap into the minds and the brains of the basin team leads and the field offices about how things are going to work in the project. Include historically underserved producers explicitly in the process. There's some projects that say, hey, we will reach out to historically underserved producers, and that's something, versus kind of a more robust solution of how historically underserved producers will be brought into the process of the project. So that's going to be an important part of RCPP, I believe, this year. And the term historically underserved refers to groups that have not participated in or in the past have received limited benefits from USDA programs. These are beginning farmers and ranchers, limited resource farmers or ranchers, and socially disadvantaged producers. And there's more criteria to look at. I just look at page 22, I think, in the notice of funding opportunity. It goes through a whole list of different questions. I just pulled out the ones that seem to resonate most with us in Oregon. But we will follow the standard Oregon national template for reviewing all proposals. So yeah, some key things. I've said this a few times. I'll say it again. Work with the basin team leads and district conservationists as you get your project together, and have a few meetings with them, phone calls, bring me in if you want to, and just kind of flesh out the project and get their seal of approval. That's important. Being able to articulate the resource concerns. I've had a few proposals that have come in where they put the wrong resource concerns in there, and that just causes problems down the line. So make sure that you vet those resource concerns. There's different categories, as you see in the portal. So just make sure by working with the basin team leads or me that you've got the right resource concerns chosen. A well-written proposal will be better received than a poorly written one. So make sure that you articulate things clearly. And I know sometimes these projects can get quite complex, but being able to kind of simplify into kind of a direct line of thought of how the problem will be addressed through this RCPP, the different activities that you're going to do, the different practices that you're going to do, why you're going to do RCPP versus EQIP contracts, and why you're the right group to be doing this. And then it never hurts to get support from leaders in the community and region. There's no place in the portal to upload letters of support from folks other than contributing partners, but you can send those to the state conservationist if you can get those. It never hurts. But it won't be the it won't be part of the scoring process that those come through. But just knowing that there is that support is important. Okay, lastly, there is an RCPP improvement process that started. NRCS held a number of events over the early spring to get input on barriers to RCPP implementation, both with lead partners and with staff. There were a couple meetings in DC and different webinars and different polls. And so this has been a real priority of the administration to get RCPP kind of moving away from the complexity that a lot of people saw that was hindering, kind of speedy progress on getting the RCPP done. I think there's a high priority to have more streamlined agreements. Those are both the PPAs and the supplemental agreements. Payment processes need to be clear, developing the RCPP portal to be more user-friendly, and then the contracting mechanisms through CD or Conservation Desktop. That's the tool that NRCS uses for contracts. And then we expect that RCPP will be noticeably improved in this next fiscal year. So thanks for your patience on that. And so with that, let's see, I'm at 1:30, and that pretty much covers my presentation, but I would be happy to address any questions or concerns, or if you want me to dig into something that I just glanced over. You can either use the chat or, I don't know, Lauren, can they?
Nothing in the chat so far.
Okay.
Okay, we got one question. Jordan asked, is the IRA funding anticipated for fiscal year 2024?
Yes, IRA funding. I think I had a slide in here that I just kind of zoomed by. Here we go. So this is the projected IRA funding over the next 4 years. For FY23, we're getting 250 million. FY24, 800 million. 25, 1.5 billion, and FY26, 2.4 billion. So we're getting into the billions. So yeah, we're gonna have more IRA funds than ever coming up. I think I saw Nellie had her hand up.
Yeah, Tom, I was just wanting to like triple check around not needing cash in hand for the RCPP. I know that that had been something I thought had been in other RCPPs. And so just confirming that if we have every reason to believe that we will receive a grant in future years, we can just mark that as cash, as a partner contribution, and that it's pending or conditional.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Cool.
Of course, I will explain for others that there are stipulations that if there's significant grants that don't come through that you said were partner contributions, NRCS can have the right, I've never seen it happen, can have the right to renegotiate the whole project or even cancel the project if big partner contributions didn't come through. So it's, so yeah.
All right, Tom, we're getting a few questions in the chat. First one from Jeremy, are project maximums likely to increase as IRA funding increases?
Whether they're going to go beyond 25 million? I don't know. That's a good question. I can't even speculate on that. They might.
The second question from Nate, it appears fee land conservation is not an eligible use of funds. Is that correct?
I want to kind of make sure I understand what you mean by fee lands. Is that public lands?
Sorry, this is Nate Ulrich. No, fee, sorry, jargon. Fee would be land ownership as opposed to a conservation easement interest in title. So in other words, can you buy land with the funding?
Yeah, you can. We can do easements on eligible land with either U.S. held or entity held easement.
Okay, easements only.
Yeah, easements. Yeah, they're perpetual easements
Okay.
that you can potentially use on eligible lands.
Thank you.
I can send you more information about that if you put your email in.
Will do. Appreciate it.
All right, Tom, next one from Kelly Alex Ross from ODF. Is there NICRA taken since this is a project-based agreement? Not sure what that acronym
NICRA, right? Yeah, it's a way of let me see if I can find that. 1 second. I want to provide you with the correct information if I could find it really here.
If it helps, NICRA is a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement.
Right.
I'm just seeing if it's taken off the top or if this is the project-based agreement, if it doesn't function like a traditional federal agreement.
Right. Organizations that have a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement, NICRA, with the federal government use the rate identified in the NICRA to determine the indirect cost to be included in a negotiated PPA as contributions. So indirect costs from a partner can't be reimbursed, but they can be used as contributions. Current NICRAs must be uploaded as part of the RCPP project proposal and the RCPP portal where applicable. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps a little bit. Just on the state side of things, we're just a little bit confused because I believe the NOFO said DOI funds could be used as some level of in-kind match. But if there's a NICRA involved under Code of Federal Regulation, we can't use it as in-kind match or partner contribution in this context.
Okay, well, my understanding is that that can be used as a partner contribution unless they change that this year.
It's all good. Probably go to water cross hiring.
Well, let me get back to you on that. I always kind of forget the NECRA rules. It's not on the top of my head, but who is that asking the question?
Ross Blue, the Oregon Department of Forestry. We spoke.
Okay. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
Do you have their email, Tom, or do you want them to drop it in the chat?
Yeah, if you could put it in the chat, that'd be great. Unless I have your email.
Okay, got another question / confirmation from Jordan. Just checking I heard correctly, the match funding requirement of 1-to-1 is not required this year. Is that anticipated to continue into the coming year funding cycles?
I imagine it is. I think the reason that we're doing it is that we have so much funds under IRA that there's no way that we could potentially, there's that the amount of partner contribution or match just doesn't exist. So I would imagine that the lack of the 1-to-1 is going to continue throughout the IRA funding cycle.
Right, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat.
Okay. Well, I hope this was useful. And if you have any questions you want to ask me, reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to respond. And I know I have a couple of things to get back to folks on from this. So I appreciate everybody's time. And I hope that you're putting in good proposals and you're working with your local basin team leads and field offices on getting together a good proposal. And hopefully reach out to me too if there's anything that I can do to help.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. I'll be
All right.
sending out the recording to everyone who put their email in the chat. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.